Has been around for a while. We just celebrated our state bicentennial 3 years ago, but many of our cities and towns are older than that, and they have stories to tell.
Case in point, the coastal town of Waldoboro, which this weekend celebrates its 250th birthday. 207's Don Kerrigan lives not far away from there and found some pieces of the town's history that surprised him.
Whether Mainers or tourists, for most, this is Waldoboro, a long strip of highway bypass built more than half a century ago. But Waldoboro is much more than a retail road. For 250 years, it's been home to generations of people and businesses that tell the story of small-town Maine.
Is there a lot in Waldoboro's past to be proud of?
Absolutely. You know, this was a thriving community.
At the Historical Society, they say it began in the mid-1700s when General Samuel Waldo brought a shipload of German immigrants here to the area then called Broad Bay.
You know, the real story is they say General Waldo sold them a bill of goods, and when they got here, they didn't have what they was promised.
Then, yes, there were indigenous people, there were other folks here, but it gave them an opportunity.
Opportunity because they did have a river to the sea, and waterfalls, and woods, and land. So the Germans began to build, eventually erecting this church before the Revolutionary War. The following year, 250 years ago, the town was incorporated and named for the general who had owned all the land. And Waldoboro began to grow, using the forests to build ships.
It may be hard to believe, but back in the 17 and 1800s, the Medomuk River was known for shipbuilding. As many as a dozen different shipyards built large sailing ships right here.
The first 5-masted schooner was built here, and many others. Ships created wealth for some, and the small town prospered.
Because Waldoboro had a customs house, and to have a customs house, something was going on back in the day. A lot of money was coming through Waldoboro.
Mills multiplied along the river. The village grew with some big houses and stores to sell things. By 1850, Waldoboro had more than 4,000 residents. But like many small Maine towns, those numbers dropped a lot over the next 100 years. Still, Waldoboro kept going.
That's Percy and Bertha.
Okay.
Those are my grandparents, so they're the ones that began the whole thing.
In 1927, Percy Moody built 3 tourist cabins along the old Route 1, then added a hot dog stand. A few years later, the state decided to reroute the road, and Moody's moved with it. And a Waldoboro landmark began.
I mean, it is very significant to Waldoboro's history, but you know, I hesitate sounding proud, okay, because for Moody's to be what Moody's is, it took the community of Waldoboro to come around it and make it what it is. Part of our sustenance here, yes, is the tourism industry, but we don't exist without the town of Waldoboro. We don't exist without the Mid-Coast. We don't exist without our regulars.
And just before Moody's moved on the other side of town, Dana Dow's father was about to build another landmark business.
Dow Furniture originally started as a chicken hatchery. 400,000 chickens a year were hatched out of this building right here.
Chickens eventually stopped making money, he says, so his father started a furniture store that's still here almost 70 years later. Lots of the town's manufacturing businesses haven't lasted that long.
Yeah, the cannon factory, and there was a bottling plant that made Orange Crush soda was one of their famous brands. That was right here in town. And Sylvania was here. The button factory, my brother started out in the button factory.
All gone, but he says this town remains a good place.
Waldoboro happens to be a very nice town. It always doesn't have a good reputation. The media sometimes has called us Dodge City on the Medomuk.
2.5 centuries of life in a small town. At the Historical Society, Bill Maxwell says this anniversary matters.
We got to give our future, the future generation, something to be proud of. They got to look at the history of this town. I mean, they got to get involved.
And at Moody's, Dan Beck says it's also about honoring a basic truth.
I think we can always be grateful for the old days, but we got to look ahead. So I pray and hope our best days are still yet to come.
Lessons from 250 years, perhaps, helping to build their future.
Lots there. I had no idea until this piece. The celebration will have all sorts of events this weekend, starting on Friday with a bean supper and a time capsule, plus music and a big parade Saturday and Sunday.
Professor Kerrigan is here to enlighten us all.
Always.
And one other thing you might not have known, the fried clams that you eat just might have been dug in Waldoboro. It said that the town is the largest producer of soft shell clams in Maine.